Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. It was my third month as an over-the-road driver when I learned that some things on the highway can't be explained. February in Wyoming is brutal. I was hauling a load from Sacramento to Chicago, and I-80 was the fastest route. I'd driven through snow before, but nothing like this. Around 2 in the morning, the blizzard hit hard. 1 minute I could see the road, the next it was just white static everywhere I looked. The wind rocked my cab. Ice formed on my windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. I white-knuckled the steering wheel, squinting through the chaos, watching my speed drop from 60 to 40 to 30. The highway had become a ghost road. No other vehicles. No lights except my own, reflecting off the swirling snow. My radio cut out to static, then nothing. Just the howl of wind and the drone of my engine. I started looking for a rest area. Federal regulations say I need to stop every so many hours anyway, but this was different. This was survival. I couldn't see the lane markers anymore. I was navigating by instinct and prayer, hoping I was still on the road and not drifting into the median or worse. That's when I realized how truly alone I was. In a 70-foot rig, surrounded by tons of cargo, and I'd never felt smaller. The quiet between wind gusts was suffocating, like the world had ended and I was the only one who didn't get the memo. I was starting to consider just stopping right there on the highway when I saw them. Tail lights. 2 red dots cutting through the white. Maybe 100 yards ahead. Another semi. They were maintaining speed, steady and sure, like the storm wasn't even touching them. Relief washed over me. I wasn't alone anymore. I eased off the brake and matched their pace, keeping a safe distance. In conditions like this, following another driver felt like the smart move. They seemed to know where they were going, moving with confidence I didn't have. But after a few minutes, something started to feel off. The tail lights were too bright, too clear. Everything else in my vision was a blur of white and shadow, but those lights cut through like they were right in front of me, even though I was keeping my distance. They didn't flicker or fade, just 2 perfect red circles, unwavering. I watched the truck ahead. It never swayed, never adjusted. Every other vehicle I'd ever followed had some drift to it, some response to wind or road conditions. This one moved like it was on rails. I grabbed my CB radio. "Hey there, driver. You got your ears on?" Static. I tried again. "This is Hammer 1, calling the rig ahead of me on westbound 80. You reading me?" Nothing but white noise. Maybe their radio was off. Maybe they were focused on driving, but something in my gut twisted. I kept following. What else could I do? Stopping meant risking getting stuck or rear-ended by someone who couldn't see me in time. At least with the truck ahead, I had a path to follow. 10 minutes became 20. 20 became 30. The storm wasn't letting up, but that truck ahead never wavered. Never slowed, never sped up. Just perfect, mechanical consistency. It started to feel hypnotic. My eyes locked on those taillights. The world around me faded into white noise and darkness. It was just me and those 2 red circles, pulling me forward through the void. I don't know how long I'd been following when I saw the sign, Rest Area 2, miles. The brake lights on the truck ahead flashed. They were pulling off. My heart actually lifted. I'd pull in behind them, maybe knock on their door, thank them for being my beacon through this nightmare. Maybe we'd share coffee in the warming shelter, trade war stories about bad weather runs. I followed them onto the exit ramp. The rest area appeared through the snow, but something was wrong. It was completely dark. No lights in the parking lot. No lights in the building. It looked abandoned. But the truck ahead didn't hesitate. They pulled into the lot, chose a parking spot near the far end, and stopped. Their lights stayed on. I parked 2 spots away, close enough to walk over, but not so close it seemed aggressive. I sat there for a moment, engine rumbling, trying to see through the snow. The other truck's lights illuminated the swirling white, but I couldn't see into their cab. I grabbed my flashlight and my jacket, took a breath. Then I opened my door and stepped out into hell. The wind hit me like a physical force. Snow stung my face. I couldn't see more than a few feet in any direction. I trudged toward the other truck, my boots sinking into snow that was already knee-deep in places. As I got closer, I started to make out details. The truck was old. Really old. The body style looked like something from the 80s, maybe earlier. Boxy cab. Rounded fenders. Paint that might have been blue once, but was now mostly rust and primer. My steps slowed. The lights were still on, still bright, but now that I was closer, I could see they weren't connected to any electrical system I could identify. Just glowing. I reached the driver's side door. My hand was shaking as I raised it to knock. Then I saw the windows. They were iced over. Not just on the outside, on the inside too. Frost covered the glass in thick, crystalline patterns. The kind that forms when a vehicle's been sitting in the cold for hours, with no heat running. I used my glove to wipe away some of the external snow and pressed my flashlight against the glass. The cab was empty. Not just empty of people. Empty. No seats, no dashboard, no steering wheel, just a hollow shell open to the elements. Snow had drifted inside through gaps in the doors and windows. The interior was coated in white. My flashlight beam swept across the hood. Snow was piled there too, undisturbed, at least 3 inches deep. This truck hadn't been driven tonight. It hadn't been driven in a very long time. But I'd followed it. I'd watched it move. I'd seen the brake lights flash. My legs went weak. I stumbled backward, my boot catching on something under the snow. I went down hard, landing on my side, flashlight flying from my hand. For a moment, I just lay there in the screaming wind, staring at that impossible truck with its impossible lights still glowing in the storm. Then I scrambled to my feet, grabbed my flashlight, and ran. I don't remember getting back to my truck. I don't remember locking the doors or starting the engine. But suddenly, I was inside, breathing hard, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I sat there for 20 minutes, maybe longer, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. Equipment failure, abandoned truck with a short in the electrical system. My eyes playing tricks on me in the storm, exhaustion, anything. But I knew what I'd seen. I'd followed that truck for 40 minutes. I'd watched it navigate perfectly through conditions that had me terrified. I'd seen it pull off the highway with deliberate intent. Eventually, I put the truck in gear. I couldn't stay there. The storm was still raging, but I'd rather risk the highway than spend another second in that parking lot. I white-knuckled it to the next town, barely breathing, checking my mirrors every few seconds. The tail lights never reappeared. By dawn, I was in a truck stop in Nebraska, drinking terrible coffee and trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. I asked other drivers about the rest area. A few knew it. One older guy, been driving for 30 years, just shook his head when I mentioned it. "Don't stop there," he said, "especially not at night." I wanted to ask why, but I didn't. Later, after my run was done, I looked up that stretch of I-80. There've been over a dozen fatal accidents there over the years. Jackknifed trucks, vehicles sliding into the median. One guy froze to death in his cab during a storm in the 90s. I still drive that route sometimes. I don't have a choice, but I don't follow other trucks anymore on night runs, and I've never stopped at that rest area again. Sometimes, on clear nights when I'm passing through Wyoming, I think about those taillights. Perfect and bright and leading me forward through the storm, and I wonder if they were trying to help me, or if I'd followed them all the way into that dark parking lot. Would I have ever left at all? By my 5th month on the road, I thought I'd seen it all. Weird truck stop characters, sketchy parking lots, the kinds of places where you keep your doors locked and your keys in your pocket. But nothing prepared me for the man at the fuel island outside Little Rock. It was summer, late June, and I was running a load from Dallas to Memphis. I'd been driving for about 10 hours straight, and my fuel gauge was getting low. Around 3 in the morning, I pulled into a 24-hour truck stop off I-40. The place was nearly deserted. Maybe 3 other trucks parked way off in the distance, their drivers sleeping in their cabs. The fuel island lights were flickering, casting weird shadows that made everything look like it was moving even when it wasn't. I was exhausted. That particular kind of tired where your eyes burn and your thoughts get fuzzy, and you just want to finish this one task and sleep. I pulled up to the diesel pump, swiped my card, and started filling. Trucks take forever to fuel up. Massive tanks. I was looking at 10, maybe 15 minutes of just standing there, listening to the pump click and whir. That's when I noticed him. There was a man standing near the air pump station about 30 feet away, just standing there, watching me. He was wearing a dirty jacket, jeans, and work boots. Could have been a driver. Could have been anyone. But something about the way he stood there, completely still, hands at his sides, made my skin crawl. I made brief eye contact. He didn't look away, didn't blink, just stared. I turned back to the fuel pump, watching the numbers climb. Tried to ignore him. Told myself he was just another weirdo, and truck stops attracted weirdos like moths to a flame. But when I glanced back, he'd moved. He was now standing by the diesel pump 1 island over, maybe 15 feet away. I didn't see him walk. Didn't hear footsteps. He was just there. My heart started beating faster. I focused on the fuel gauge, willing it to go faster. Come on, come on. You shouldn't be here. His voice made me jump. It was flat, emotionless, like he was reading off a script. I turned to look at him. Excuse me? You shouldn't be here, he repeated. Same tone, same inflection. Not tonight. Look, man, I'm just getting fuel. I'll be out of here in a few minutes. He didn't respond, just kept staring at me with those dead eyes. The fuel pump clicked off. Finally. I fumbled with the nozzle, hands shaking now, trying to hang it back up and get my receipt. I could feel him watching every movement. I started walking back toward my cab. The air felt wrong. Too heavy, too quiet except for the buzz of those flickering lights. I tried to warn you, he said behind me. I stopped, against every instinct screaming at me to just get in the truck and leave. I turned around. He was now standing directly behind my trailer, blocking the path to my cab. He was at least 20 feet behind me a second ago. How did you... I started. He's already inside, the man said. He was pointing at the truck stop building. Who's inside? What are you talking about? If you're still listening, you probably enjoy stories like this. A like or a comment helps keep them alive. The man tilted his head. I tried to warn you. It's too late now. Then he turned and walked away. Not ran, just walked. Into the darkness beyond the fuel island lights, past where the pavement ended and the scrub brush began. Within seconds, he disappeared completely. I stood there, frozen, my heart hammering in my chest. Every instinct told me to get in my truck and leave, but I needed the receipt. I needed to log my fuel stop. Company policy. Federal regulations. I looked at the truck stop building. Fluorescent lights buzzed inside. Through the windows, I could see the clerk behind the bulletproof glass. Head down, probably on his phone. No one else visible. I walked to the entrance quickly, scanning every shadow. Pulled the door open. The bell chimed. Inside, it smelled like old coffee and cleaning chemicals. Country music played softly from a radio behind the counter. The clerk looked up, a kid maybe 19 or 20, looking half asleep. "Just need my fuel receipt," I said. "Pump 4. He yawned and printed it out. Slid it under the glass partition. "Hey," I said, "did you see anyone weird outside? Guy in a dirty jacket?" The clerk blinked at me. "Just you, man. Been dead quiet all night." "You sure?" "He was just out there, at the fuel island." "Dude, I can see the whole lot from here." He gestured at the windows. "Ain't nobody out there but you." I took the receipt with shaking hands and left. I walked back to my truck, scanning every shadow, every dark corner. Saw nothing. No one. I climbed into my cab, locked the doors, and started the engine. As I was pulling out, I glanced in my side mirror. The man was standing exactly where my truck had been parked, just standing there in the middle of the fuel island, watching me leave. I checked the mirror again 5 seconds later. He was gone. I drove until sunrise without stopping. Didn't even pull over to use the bathroom. I just kept my foot on the gas and my eyes on the road and tried not to think about how he'd moved without me seeing him, how he'd known I'd go inside, how the clerk hadn't seen him at all. A few weeks later, I was talking to another driver at a rest stop in Tennessee. Somehow the conversation turned to weird experiences. I told him about the man at the fuel island outside Little Rock. His face went pale. 3-ish in the morning? He asked. Flickering lights. Guy in a dirty jacket. Yeah, I said. You've seen him too? He shook his head. No, but I heard about him. There was a string of robberies at truck stops along I-40 that summer. Drivers getting jumped when they went inside to pay. One guy got stabbed. Another got his skull cracked open with a tire iron. Jesus, I said. They never caught who did it. Just stopped. After a couple months, the robberies just stopped. I thought about the man's words. You shouldn't be here. Not tonight. He's already inside. Was he warning me? Or was he part of it? I still don't know. I've driven past that truck stop a dozen times since then. I've never stopped there again. I don't think I ever will. Sometimes late at night, when I'm alone on the road, I wonder what would have happened if I'd ignored the warning, or if I'd gone inside without the man's words rattling around in my head. Would I have noticed something wrong? Would I have been ready? Or would I have become just another statistic? Another driver who stopped at the wrong place at the wrong time? I guess I'll never know. But I do know this. If someone tells you that you shouldn't be somewhere, maybe listen, even if you can't explain who they are or how they knew. Federal regulations are supposed to keep us safe. Hours of service rules. Mandatory rest breaks. You can only drive so many hours before you have to stop and sleep. It's the law, but sometimes following the law puts you in situations that are anything but safe. It was late fall, my 8th month on the road. I was hauling from Jacksonville to Newark, a long run up I-95. By the time I crossed into South Carolina, I was hitting my hours limit. I had to stop. Around midnight, I pulled into a rest area just past the state line. It was busy, which I took as a good sign. Maybe a dozen other trucks parked for the night, drivers sleeping in their cabs. Civilization, company, safety in numbers. I went through my usual routine, logged my hours on the tablet, set my alarm for my 8-hour break, closed the curtains in my sleeper cab, locked the doors, turned on my white noise app to drown out the highway sounds. The sleeper cab is small, just a mattress, some storage, and barely enough room to sit up, but after 10 hours of driving, it feels like a 5-star hotel. I was asleep within minutes. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. There was a sound, soft, distant at first. My brain was trying to incorporate it into whatever dream I'd been having, but it was persistent. Regular knock, knock, knock. I lay there in the dark, heart starting to pound, trying to orient myself. The white noise app was still playing. Outside, I could hear the distant rush of traffic on I-95. Knock, knock, knock. It was coming from the driver's side door. I sat up, groggy and confused, checked my phone. 2:47 a.m. I'd been asleep for less than 3 hours. Another driver, maybe. Someone having truck trouble, needing help. It happened sometimes. I pulled back the curtain slightly and looked toward the driver's door. The small window there showed only darkness. Knock, knock, knock. 3 deliberate taps. Patient, waiting. "Hello," I called out, my voice rough with sleep. No response. Knock, knock, knock. Same rhythm, same spot, same pressure. I turned on the cab light, squinting against the sudden brightness. My mind was racing now, sleep falling away. Why wouldn't they answer? Why just keep knocking? I considered opening the door, but something stopped me. Some instinct deep in my gut that said no, don't. Instead, I moved toward the passenger side, trying to get a different angle. Maybe I could see around the front of the truck, see who was out there. From the passenger window, I couldn't see the driver's side, just the dark parking lot, other trucks silhouetted in the distance, and the woods beyond the rest area. Knock, knock, knock. The sound made me flinch. It was too low, not at the window level. Lower, near the door handle, like someone was crouching down. My mouth went dry. I moved back toward the driver's side, trying to see the mirror. In its reflection, I could just barely make out a figure standing beside my truck. I couldn't see their face or upper body. Just from the chest down, dirty pants, bare feet. In November, in South Carolina, where it got down to the 40s at night. And the feet weren't just bare, they were covered in something dark, something that could have been mud or blood. I stopped breathing. The figure didn't move, just stood there. Close to my door, knock, knock, knock. I grabbed my CB radio with shaking hands, pressed the button. "This is the blue Freightliner, spot 17. I need help. Someone's outside my truck. I got you, driver." A voice cut through immediately, older, steady. "I can see your truck. I'm coming." Within seconds, I saw headlights swing across my windshield. A spotlight beam swept past my windows, bright and searching. "Hey, stop right there." The voice outside was authoritative. Military, maybe. I said stop. Footsteps running. Fast, heavy boots on pavement, then crunching through leaves and brush. Someone was fleeing into the woods. "Coast is clear," the voice called out. "You can come out." I sat there for a moment, heart still hammering, trying to decide if this was real, if I could trust it. Finally, I unlocked the door and climbed down. The man standing there was in his 60s, maybe. Tall, solid. He was holding a massive flashlight like a weapon. "You all right?" he asked. Yeah, thank you. Did you see who it was?" "Saw them run when I came over. Disappeared into those trees." He gestured toward the woods beyond the rest area. "Looked like a young male, no shoes. Seemed out of it. Maybe drugs." I nodded, still shaking. He was knocking on my door. Wouldn't answer when I called out. The man walked around my truck, shining his light on the ground and the side of the cab. Then he stopped. "Come look at this." I walked over. There were muddy handprints on my door handle, and on the side of the cab, not just a few, dozens. Like someone had been running their hands along the truck, feeling their way around it. "Jesus," I whispered. "I'm calling the cops," the man said, pulling out his phone. "You shouldn't stay here alone tonight. I'll park next to you until they come." The police showed up about 20 minutes later, took my statement, searched the woods with flashlights, found nothing. The officer said there'd been reports over the past few weeks of someone acting erratically at rest areas along this stretch of I-95, moving between trucks, looking in windows, but they'd never been able to catch them. "Keep your doors locked," the officer said. "Try to park in well-lit areas, and if it happens again, call 911 immediately." Like that was supposed to make me feel better. The older driver, his name was Frank, stayed parked next to me until dawn. We didn't talk much, just sat in our respective cabs, engines running, lights on. I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. When the sun finally came up, Frank knocked on my door. I opened it. "You good to drive?" he asked. "Yeah, thank you for last night." He nodded. "Watch yourself out here. It's not as safe as it used to be." I thought about those handprints, about the bare feet covered in something dark, about how the person had stood there, knocking patiently, waiting for me to open the door. What would have happened if I had? I still stop at rest areas. I don't have a choice. Federal regulations don't care if you're scared. But I'm more careful now. I park under lights, I keep a weapon within reach, and I never, ever open my door after dark without knowing exactly who's on the other side. Sometimes I think about that night, about the knock, about whoever was out there in the dark, running their hands along my truck. And I wonder how many other drivers they visited, how many doors they knocked on, and if anyone else was foolish enough to answer. West Texas on I-10 is one of the most isolated stretches of highway in America. Exits are 50, 60, sometimes 70 miles apart. Cell service is non-existent. If something goes wrong out there, you're on your own. The CB radio is your lifeline. It's how you talk to other drivers, how you warn people about accidents or weather or cops, how you remind yourself that even though you're alone in your cab, you're part of something bigger, a community of people all moving through the darkness together. But sometimes you hear things on the CB that you can't explain. It was late spring, my 10th month driving. I was hauling a load across West Texas at night. Around 7 p.m. the sun had set, and I was staring at 2 more hours of nothing but flat desert and darkness. The CB was on, volume low, mostly quiet chatter. Someone talking about a truck with a busted taillight near mile marker 220. Another driver recommending a good breakfast place in El Paso. Normal stuff. Then the voice came through. "Anybody out there?" It was faint at first, unclear. But there was an edge to it, desperation, panic. I turned up the volume. "This is Rolling Thunder. I'm here. What's your 20? "I don't know where I am." The voice was young, male, maybe early 20s. "I can't see the road anymore." Other drivers started chiming in. "What do you mean you can't see the road? What mile marker did you pass last?" "Calm down, son. Tell us what you see." But the voice just kept spiraling. "The road it ended. I'm in the dark. There's something out here." A chill ran down my spine. The road doesn't just end on I-10, not unless you drive off it. And even then, you'd know, you'd feel it. "What's your truck number?" An older voice cut through. Authoritative, trying to take control of the situation. "It's getting closer," the voice said. There was real terror in it now. "Why won't anyone help me? Can't you see my lights? I'm flashing my high beams, please." I scanned the horizon in every direction. Nothing but darkness. No other lights. No trucks. Nothing. "Son, we can't see you," the older voice said. "You need to tell us where you are." "It's getting closer," the voice repeated. Then quieter, like he was talking to himself. Oh God, what is that?" Then screaming. Raw. Genuine. The sound of someone in absolute terror. There was a crash. The sound of metal crumpling, glass shattering, the CB distorted with static and noise. Then silence. Dead silence. Hello? Someone called out on the CB. Come back. Are you there? Nothing. Anybody got a location on him? Another voice asked. Negative. I didn't see anything. Me neither. Someone call highway patrol. The older voice came back on. I'm on it, giving them this stretch of 10. Everyone keep your eyes open for a wreck. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I kept scanning, looking for any sign of a vehicle. Brake lights, hazards, fire, anything. But there was nothing. Just miles and miles of empty desert. 30 minutes passed. My truck and several others crept along, everyone hyper-aware, searching. The CB stayed busy with people coordinating, sharing locations, trying to find whoever had been in distress. Then the voice came back. Thank you for trying to help. It was calm now. Flat, emotionless, like the panic had never happened. Jesus Christ, someone breathed on the CB. You okay? What happened? I found the road again, the voice said. Same monotone. I'm back on the road. A long pause, everyone processing this. Where are you? I asked. What's your location? Silence. Then, barely a whisper. It's still in the truck with me. My blood went cold. The CB went completely dead. Not static. Not the normal white noise. Just nothing. Like someone had cut power to every radio on the highway simultaneously. I looked at my radio. The power light was still on. The channel indicator showed I was on 19. Everything looked normal. But there was no sound, not even the background hiss of static. I tried transmitting. Hello? Anyone there? Nothing. I fiddled with the dials, changed channels, turned it off and back on. Still nothing. It stayed dead for the rest of the drive. I reached the next town around 10 p.m., pulled into the first truck stop I saw. 3 other trucks were already there, drivers standing outside in the parking lot, talking animatedly. I walked over. You guys hear that on the CB? Their faces said it all. Yeah, one of them said. What the fuck was that? Sounded like someone having a breakdown, another offered. But he didn't sound convinced. Did anyone get a location? Find anything? Head shakes all around. I called highway patrol, the older driver from the CB said. He looked shaken. They said they got multiple calls about it. They sent units to search the whole stretch. Found nothing. No vehicles off the road. No wrecks. No signs of distress. What about the guy? I asked. Did they find who was calling? That's the thing, the older driver said. They checked truck registration records. There's no vehicle matching the voice or the description on that route tonight. No one logged a pickup from El Paso or anywhere west. So who the hell was on the radio? No one had an answer. One of the younger drivers pulled out his phone. I'm checking news sites, social media. Maybe someone posted something. We waited while he scrolled. Finally, he looked up. Nothing. Not a single word about an accident or incident on I-10 tonight. We stood there in that truck stop parking lot, trying to make sense of it, trying to rationalize what we'd all heard. Mass hallucination, some kind of radio interference, a prank, anything. But we all knew what we'd heard. The terror in that voice had been real. The crash had been real. That final message. It's still in the truck with me. I've driven I-10 through West Texas maybe 20 times since that night. I keep my CB on. Volume up. Part of me's hoping to hear that voice again, to get some kind of explanation, but part of me is terrified that I will. I've talked to other drivers about it. Some have heard the story secondhand. No one admits to hearing the transmission themselves, except for those of us who were there that night. I don't know what happened out there in the desert. I don't know if someone really was in trouble, if we failed to help them, if they're still out there somewhere, or if it was something else. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that uses our voices, our radios, our connection to each other against us. All I know is that sometimes Late at night, when I'm driving through the empty stretches, I hear whispers in the CB static, voices that shouldn't be there, and I have to turn it off because I'm afraid of what they might say. I'm afraid I'll hear that voice again. Calm, flat, empty. It's still in the truck with me, and I'm afraid that this time it might be my voice saying it. My 1-year mark as an OTR driver came in early December. I'd survived 4 seasons on the road. Winter storms, summer heat, breakdowns, close calls. I was starting to feel like I knew what I was doing. That confidence almost got me killed. It started with a special assignment, a single large shipment to a warehouse facility outside Chattanooga, Tennessee. Good pay, simple run. GPS had the address. I'd drop the load, get the signature, and be done by evening. Everything seemed routine. I left Atlanta around noon, made good time on I-75, and reached the Chattanooga area by mid-afternoon. My GPS guided me off the main highway onto increasingly rural roads. No problem. Lots of warehouses were set up away from the city, where land was cheap and there was room for big trucks to maneuver. But the roads kept getting smaller, narrower, more isolated. Pavement turned to gravel. Trees pressed in on both sides. Houses became sparse, then non-existent. I started to get that familiar prickle of unease. I checked my paperwork again. The address was correct. The delivery was confirmed. I was expected today. My GPS chimed. "You have arrived at your destination." I looked around. I was at the mouth of a gravel driveway that led into the woods. No buildings visible, no signs, no indication that this was anything but someone's private property. I checked the address one more time. It matched. "Screw it," I muttered. Maybe the warehouse was set back from the road for privacy or security. Big companies did that sometimes. I turned onto the driveway. It was narrow, barely wide enough for my truck. Branches scraped against the trailer as I crept forward, gravel crunching under my tires. The trees blocked out most of the late afternoon light, creating a tunnel of shadow. I drove for what felt like a quarter-mile. Just when I was about to stop and back out, the driveway opened into a clearing. There was a building, large, warehouse-style, concrete and corrugated metal. But something was immediately wrong. The windows were broken, weeds grew through cracks in the parking lot. The loading dock had partially collapsed. This place was abandoned. Had been for years. I stopped the truck, engine idling, staring at the building. This didn't make sense. My paperwork said the delivery was expected today, right now, but this facility hadn't been operational in years. I grabbed my paperwork and climbed out of the cab. The air was still and quiet. No birds, no insects, just silence. The main entrance had a faded sign above it. I squinted at the worn letters. They matched the company name on my delivery order. This was the place, or at least it had been once. I tried my phone. No signal. "Of course," I said to the empty clearing. I walked around the building looking for any signs of recent activity. Anything to explain why I'd been sent here. The place was definitely abandoned. Broken glass, rust, graffiti on some walls. But then I noticed something. Tire tracks in the dust and dirt. Fresh ones. Leading to a side entrance, and footprints, multiple sets, also recent. Someone had been here. Recently. Every instinct I had told me to leave. Get back in the truck and call dispatch from the next town. This wasn't right. But I'd already driven all this way. And if someone was here, maybe they could explain. Maybe the company was using the facility for storage even if it wasn't fully operational. I approached the side entrance. The door was slightly ajar, moving in a faint breeze. I pushed it open. "Hello, delivery for company name?" My voice echoed through the empty space. No response. I stepped inside, using my phone's flashlight to see. The interior was worse than the exterior. Debris everywhere. Old equipment covered in dust and cobwebs. Water damage on the walls. The smell of mold and decay. But the tire tracks continued. Someone had driven something through here recently. I followed them deeper into the building, through a main warehouse space, down a corridor lined with offices. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, creating harsh shadows that seemed to move on their own. The tracks led to a large interior room. The door was closed. I stood there, hand on the door handle, every nerve in my body screaming at me to turn around. Then I heard it. Voices. On the other side of the door. Low conversation. Multiple people. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was casual. Normal. Relief flooded through me. Okay, people were here. This wasn't completely abandoned. Maybe they were contractors, or security, or salvage workers. I was about to knock when I realized something. If they were legitimate workers, why were they in the dark? Why hadn't they responded when I called out? Why was this place set up like it was abandoned when clearly it wasn't? I took a step back from the door, moving quietly. The voices stopped. My heart hammered in my chest. Had they heard me? The door opened. 3 men stood there, dressed normally. Jeans, work shirts, boots. They could have been anyone. But their eyes were wrong, cold, calculating. They stared at me without speaking, and I felt like prey being sized up by predators. "I'm looking for company name," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "I have a delivery." The men looked at each other. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Then the one in front spoke. "No delivery today." His voice was flat, final. "You should go," I tried to explain. Showed them my paperwork. "See? It says—" The man looked at the paper without taking it. Didn't even glance at the details. "Wrong address, leave. Now." The way he said it wasn't a suggestion, it was a threat. The other 2 men hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. They just stood there, blocking the doorway, radiating menace. "Okay," I said, backing away. "Sorry, my mistake, I'll just—" I turned and walked. Fast. Not quite running, but close. I could feel them watching me. Could hear their footsteps behind me, following at a distance. I didn't look back. Didn't stop. Just made my way through that dark building, following my phone's light, trying not to panic. When I burst out the side entrance into the gray afternoon light, I sucked in air like I'd been drowning. I ran to my truck, fumbled with the keys, climbed into the cab, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. I checked my mirror. The 3 men had emerged from the building. They stood at the edge of the clearing, watching me. Not moving, just watching. I threw the truck into reverse and started backing down that narrow driveway. It was dangerous. I was going too fast, branches scraping the trailer, gravel spraying. But I didn't care. I needed to get out of there. It took forever to reach the main road. When I finally did, I put the truck in drive and didn't stop until I reached the nearest town. I found a gas station with working phones and called dispatch. "I need to talk to someone about the delivery to Chattanooga," I said. The dispatcher put me on hold. 2 minutes passed. 3. Finally, they came back on the line. "We're canceling that delivery. Return to the hub." "What? Why?" "Just return to hub. We'll discuss it when you get here." "Can you at least tell me what's going on? I was just there. There were people—" "Sir, return to hub. Immediately." The line went dead. I stood there in that gas station parking lot, still shaking, trying to process what had just happened. I drove back to the Atlanta hub that evening. When I arrived, my supervisor pulled me into his office. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. I told him everything. The abandoned facility, the fresh tire tracks, the men in the building, the way they'd threatened me. His face grew darker as I talked. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That address," he finally said. "It's been flagged." Flagged. By local police. They suspect it's being used for activities we don't want to be associated with. "What kind of activities?" He shook his head. "You don't need to know. What you need to know is that someone in our system entered that delivery order. Someone who shouldn't have. We're investigating internally." So I was sent there on purpose. We don't know yet. Could be a mistake. Could be something else. He looked at me seriously. "Either way, you did the right thing by leaving. Don't go back there. Don't talk about this with other drivers. And if anyone contacts you asking about that delivery, you tell me immediately." I wanted to ask more questions, wanted answers. But the look on his face told me the conversation was over. I never found out what was really going on at that facility. Never learned who the three men were or what they were doing there. Never discovered who set up the delivery order or why. But I made one thing very clear to dispatch after that. No more solo rural deliveries. No more mysterious addresses in the middle of nowhere. If something felt off about an assignment, I wouldn't take it. They agreed. I think I'd scared them as much as the situation had scared me. Sometimes I think about those three men, about the way they'd looked at me. Like they were deciding something. Weighing options. I think about what might have happened if I'd walked into that room without hearing their voices first. If I'd been less cautious, less suspicious. Would I have walked out at all? Or would I have become just another missing driver, another unsolved case, another truck found abandoned on some rural road with no explanation? I'll never know, but I do know this. There are things happening out there on the back roads, in those abandoned buildings, in those places that don't show up properly on GPS, things that use legitimate businesses as cover. Things that prey on drivers like me who are just trying to do their jobs. And I know that sometimes the most dangerous thing on the road isn't the weather or the traffic or the mechanical failures. It's the people who know you're alone, who know you're isolated, who know that if something happens to you out there, it might be hours or days before anyone notices. That's the reality of this job that no one tells you about when you're getting your CDL. The road doesn't just test your driving skills, it tests your instincts, your judgment, your ability to recognize danger and respond to it. I passed my first year, but I'm not sure I've passed that test yet, because I'm still out here, still taking loads, still driving through the night, still pulling into places I've never been before, trusting that the address is legitimate and the people I'm delivering to are who they say they are. Most of the time they are. But sometimes you end up at an abandoned warehouse in the woods with three men staring at you like they're deciding whether you'll ever leave, and all you can do is hope your instincts are strong enough to get you out. That was my first year on the road. 5 stories. 5 moments when everything felt wrong and I wasn't sure I'd make it through. I'm still driving, still hauling loads across America. Still spending my nights in truck stops and rest areas, still watching my mirrors, still listening to the CB static. Most drivers have stories like these, things we don't talk about with people outside the industry, things that sound impossible or ridiculous when you try to explain them, but we know. We've seen the road's darker side, the things that happen in the spaces between towns, in the hours between midnight and dawn. You learn to trust your instincts out here. You learn to recognize when something feels off. You learn that sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you can see. It's what you can't explain. I've got years ahead of me on these roads, thousands of miles still to drive, hundreds of strange towns and isolated stops and long stretches of darkness. I just hope I've seen the worst of it. But deep down, I know I probably haven't. Thanks for listening. If you made it through all 5 stories, you've got the stomach for this kind of work. Maybe you're a driver yourself. Maybe you know someone who is. Or maybe you're just someone who understands that the real horror isn't monsters or ghosts. It's the things that could actually happen, the situations that feel just real enough to keep you awake at night. Either way, if you're driving tonight, keep your doors locked. Trust your gut. And if something feels wrong, even if you can't explain why, don't ignore it. The road has a way of punishing people who don't listen. Stay safe out there. And whatever you do, don't follow the phantom taillights.